In this video, you're going to learn how to build your very own matchmaking app just like Tinder without having to write a single line of code using a tool called Bubble. Bubble is what's known as a no-code tool, which, as the name suggests, means that you can create fully functional apps without having to write a single line of code. When it comes to no-code tools, Bubble is by far my favorite, as it includes absolutely everything you need to bring your app to life. So this includes being able to create your own custom database, design the actual visual interface of your app, stitch everything together and make it functional using visual workflows, and of course the ability to integrate with third-party tools and services. Now, when it comes to our matchmaking app today, there is just so much that we need to cover, so I'm going to hand this one over to Matt, and he's going to walk you through the entire process.
Hey guys, and welcome to Building with Bubble. In today's course, we are going to build a Tinder clone. Essentially, we're going to go through the whole process of creating the design for the app, setting up some of the design colors, and creating sign-up, sign-in pages, an onboarding flow, the matching and the algorithm itself, as well as also creating settings pages, chat functionality, as well as some different dashboards. So there's a couple of items that you'll need to know, and that will be things like using your Google Cloud Console for APIs, as well as we're going to get into some depth in specific workflows, as well as things like custom and different events. So hopefully you have your notepad with you and you are ready to build and start learning. So let's get into it. So in this first section, we are going to do a brief overview of what the app will look like by the end, some of the design features, and then we're going to go and look at our Notion page, see the database and the option sets, and then go through creating each one of the database tables, as well as going through the option sets, and then also some of the more advanced features that you'll need to implement to be able to get this app up and running.
So we're going to start by going through what we're going to build today, and that is going to be our Tinder clone. So we're going to go through our general process of creating the sign-up pages, the different login and setup steps. Then from there, we're going to go through to onboarding page. So that will look something like this, where we will go through each one of these steps where you add your first name, your birthday, and then going to go through things like setting your gender and then also selecting interests. And then also go through different things like the actual matches themselves. So once we have set up all our different match elements, then you'll have them all at the top of your list, and then the ability to then add different chat pages. We also going to go through setting up the actual swipe functionality, where you'll have the different users that show on the page. You can either swipe left or right to see the new photos, and then you can add either your likes or your dislikes. We also going to have an upload area where you will set your cover image and then all the different kind of display images like your carousel. And then from there, we'll also go and set up our actual chat elements and then set some conditionals on these items for different display methods. And then the main part will be setting up your profile page, which will have things like being able to set your preferences, your matching ratios, your bio, your age, and then also an important thing here is setting your location. So we will need some different items like your Google Maps API key, and this will all kind of integrate into our matching area. So let's go through what we're going to need. First, we have our option sets, which will be gender, sexual interests, and then here is the list we're going to use. Then we're also going to have a bit of styling here. So we've added a list or a link for the actual color palette. So we'll have a look at that. And this might not be the exact one, but we can use this to replicate what we need to show just to get the style and the vibe for the app itself. Then we're also going to use some elements, which will be base icon and then the item itself or logo and brand. And then we'll have our basic onboarding steps and then our actual kind of data types. Okay, so let's jump in and we're going to go and create a new app. This will be Tinder mobile clone. We start with a mobile app. And over here, we're just going to say start with basic features. I'll move this out of the way and we wait for that to load. Cool. So now here we have our homepage, and we'll get into that design in a bit. But let's go first and set up our different data types. Okay. So I'm going to close these, and then let's start here. So you can see by default, we already have this user type. And here we already have email, modified date, create a date, and slug. So we're going to go here to create new field, and we're going to start adding in these items. So the first one, what do we need is name, which is type text. Then we're also going to add in a bio, which is type text. Let's go have a look what else we need. And we're going to use a few items here, which will be age and also look at date of birth. Now, in the editor at the moment, there are a couple of items that don't really work in our preview. So I'm going to show you two different ways to do it. One that will work in your preview mode, and then one that would work in the actual live app itself. So here we're going to have age, which will be a number. And we can also set here age, which will be a text value. And then this one, DOB, stands for date of birth. And that we're just going to set as a date. Now, this will be for some more advanced kind of settings where you will set the date of birth and then the age will kind of auto configure. But we'll have two options where you can either set it or you can use that advanced configuration. Cool. So now we need to set these over here. This is age preference. So let's just tick all of these off here. And age preference is going to be preference is going to be a numeric range. Let's say create. Cool. Now, gender, we need to go and actually create an option set. So let's go over here to our option sets. You can see that we need this over here. So we go over here to our top. You can say option sets. We can skip this tutorial. I'm going to go over to new option sets and say create that. Now we need our three types, which will be, and then our last one. Cool. So now we have our option set there. So now we can actually go back to that specific data type and then reference it in our data table. Cool. So we can go over here, type this. Now we need to look over here for our option set list, and we're going to set that. Go create. Perfect. So we can tick that off. Now, these are going to be pretty important fields and data types within this app, as this is kind of the basis of the whole premise of kind of creating a Tinder clone. So we're going to need liked users and disliked users. Okay, so the first one we're going to put as liked users, and we need to search for the type user. So it almost references itself from the type that we are creating. And an important thing to do here is to click this box. So we need to make sure that it is a list of entries. Cool. So now we can see here, liked users is a list of users. Now we can go over here again and we say disliked users. And this again is going to be the user data type. We need to make sure that we use this field as a list, multiple entries. We need to tick that yes and then create. Cool. So now you can see we also have disliked users is a list of users. So we can go and turn these two off. Now let's go and create a location. This here is going to be a geographic address. It's going to be a single entry. And here we're going to have our distance preference. And that is going to be a number. And here we go. So now we need to go and add in another option set for sexual interest. So let's go back to our option sets type. And over here, we are going to go there, option sets, and there. So our sexual interests. And we're going to say create. Now this is going to have our different types. And oh, oopsie, we need to create those single entries. Now, an important thing we need to do here is we need to now relate the gender, which a user will set for themselves, and then the sexual interest, which is someone that will set for what they need to find. So it needs to use those two types to then relate to different users within the liked or disliked list, or just within the user list itself. So what we need to do is go over here to the top and we create a new attribute. And this we're going to call interest type. And we're going to use a sub option set here. So over here, we're going to click gender, create, and now we're going to modify these specific attributes. So all we can do here is set like men to male and women to female. And then everyone, we need to go and add these. So we need to quickly go back and make one change. what we need to do is create that as formal term, interest, the type. We're going to use this gender option set. We need to make this a list of entries. So now for men, we can just say male, add woman. We can go to female, add. And then for everyone, we're going to add both of these types. So that will be male, female, and then we can also add in non-binary as well. So essentially, we're creating a link between those specific interests and then that specific user setting. Cool. So now we can go back into our data types and let's look at the item that we need to tick off here, and that is our sexual interests. So we go create new field, sexual interests, and now this we're going to pull the option set and we're going to say create. Cool. So now we also need to set profile photo. So we're going to go to create new field. This will be profile photo, and this is going to be type image. Perfect. Cool. So now we've just gone through and created all the types that we're going to need for our specific user. Now let's carry on and keep doing the rest of these. So we have just added a profile photo, but we now need to create a new type called user images. And these are going to be the ones that display on the page where we're going to swipe and then look at the different pictures. So we say create user images, then we need a cover image and then an image list. So the cover image will be the first image you see for like profile picture for that person. And this is going to be type image. We can create a new field, and then this is going to be list of images. What did we call it here? Images list. So let's just keep it standardized images list. And this is also going to be image, but we're going to say this field is a list of entries and create. Cool. So now we have our user images done. Now this next one, we're going to create the matches, and let's create a new type here. We say matches, create new field, all matched users. As you can see here, this is going to be a list of users. So we type user and list of user, create, and then the match chat will reference the chat. So we can't go and reference this in this match type yet because we haven't actually created our chat type. So we're going to come back to that now. So let's go back to our database. We're going to create a new type called chat. And in chat, we can create users, create a new field, users, and this will be users again, and this will be a list. So this is going to be not a very long list. It'll be between two people, and then that how we will create our chat in the conversation area. Cool. And then over here, we're going to use the last feud, and that is going to be the date. Perfect. So now we can go back into our match or our matches. And now we're going to say the match chat, and that will reference a chat itself. So matches, go match chat, and that we're going to reference the chat type. Cool. So now we have created our types there. And now we have all pretty much the base areas, but now we need to go and actually create a type that will fill that specific chat page or that area. So we need to create the message type on the left, go create, and we need to create our content and our OG chat. So the content will relate to the actual messages. So we're going to make that type text. And now the OG chat essentially relates back to the chat itself and then gives almost an ID for each of the messages so that we can sort it into the correct area. So we're going to say here OG chat. So we can also just put an identifier here like a link, and then that's going to relate back to chat itself. So that's going to pull a specific chat ID and then link it to all of those messages. Cool. So now we can create that. Alrighty. So we've just gone through and created all of data types. And now we can go through and start creating our actual pages and then implementing those types and the workflows to actually start building out our functionality.
So in this section, we are going to have a look at building the sign-in and the sign-out page, creating a couple of conditionals here, and then also creating the actual workflows that you'll need to use when logging a user in, as well as signing a user up. And then we're going to look at some flows surrounding that as well.
So let's get started with creating our sign in and sign up, and then we're going to get into creating the actual onboarding flow itself. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our editor, and we still only have our first page here. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we set up some structures within the page. And at the top, we just want to have essentially the logo and then maybe the title. And then at the bottom, we can add in our different login options for your login or your sign up. So before we do that, let's actually go back and set what we'll use for styling within the app. So we're going to go to our color palette and we can see our different hex values. So we're going to go over here to our styles on the left, and then we're going to go to style variables. And over here, we can set our primaries and our text colors and whatnot. So let's go to our palette, and you can definitely set these according to your specific designs. But for now, we'll keep it simple, and we're just going to use a variation of our primaries and our contrasts. So I can add in, there we go, my first, like the purple. The primary contrast will keep like that. Text, we can update to this almost like a lighter black, a bit of a tinted black. And we can add in our own extra ones here. So let's go and we can let's use this one. And we're just going to add it into our primary 10. And now we have like our two different purples and then that kind of black color. Cool. So the first thing we can do here at the top is go in and we're going to add in an image. And that image itself, we can scale down a little bit. So max width, let's say we're going to make it 200. You can see it makes it a lot smaller. We center that, and then we can add some margin at the top, and we just put 25. Now, underneath this, we could either add in a text value, or we could add in another image logo. For now, we're just going to add in another text below this, and we're just going to type in our app name. We're going to center that, and we need to go to our layout. We put that in the center. And now you can tell it's really too small. So we do need to go customize the size. And we could go 36, but we'll probably need to go a bit bigger. So we're just going to type 50. And then what we can do is change our weighting. And for the app itself, you can go and change your different kind of layout. For this front one, you can just use a basic sans or something. And then now at the bottom, we're going to add in another group. And in this group, we're going to add in two buttons. Now, this first button, we're going to call sign up. And let's go adjust these items. And what we're going to do here is just add margins to the left. But we're going to click on the group itself and then go and add 20 to the left, 20 to the right. And then we can just go Control C, Control V, go to that bottom button, and here we're going to type sign in. What I'm actually going to do is make the sign in button the first one. And now you can see that we have these two buttons, but they stacked almost against each other. So we're going to go to this group B, and then we're going to say here in the layout area, apply gap spacing between elements. And here you can use it for whatever you kind of want to do. I'm just going to use 15 pixels. Okay, so now we have our basic items here. Now let's go and get our main icon. So we're going to go to our icons, and then we can just call this, we'll say download. And then in this image itself, we can go to appearance, we say upload, and we're going to add in. So now we have our orange. So we haven't really used the orange color scheme from our pages here. So we're going to see how it looks, and then we can maybe switch it out for another item. So let's start working on a specific style. So we're going to click on the actual element, the home page, and then we're going to go down here to a gradient. Now the gradient will start with one color at the top and then end with another at the bottom. So our starting color, we can use our purple, and then we can use our kind of orange. And you can see that like we have some conflicting items here. So maybe what we can do for these specific buttons is we're going to use the black for the background, and then the sign up as well. We can use the black for the background. And this icon, the orange doesn't really work too well. So what we can do is remove that. And then instead, we're going to go to the left and we're just going to add in an icon. And this icon, we're just going to type fire. And then we can change this to either the black, or we can add in a white. We can use the contrasting color at the top. So for now, let's actually just use a white. We're going to center that, and we can make this 60 by 60. You make it a bit bigger, maybe 100 by 100. Still a bit small, but we can come and work on that in a bit. Okay, so now you can see that all our items are stacked very close to the top. So if we want to make sure that it kind of stays a bit responsive and then goes to the layout of the actual page size, we can go to the top, go to this home area, and then what we will do is set up these. So we can set up almost the layout of the items. What we need to do is go and add in one group at the top, and then this will be, we're going to call this group container. And now we can add in all the elements we just created into that specific group. And now inside this group, what we're going to do is we're going to make sure we don't set the height of the content. And then we're going to go to this top and we're going to click this thing over here. So space around. So essentially the space around will push all the items into their different spaces. Okay. So let's work a bit on the styling. This font color, let's make this white as well. This we can leave as it is. We can go to this group itself, and then we're going to say apply spacing between elements. So we can put 25 as well. And then at the bottom, let's, instead of using black, we can go to this background. We can change that to white. And then our font color, we're going to change to that primary color. And then for sign up, we'll do the same. The background color, we're going to set to white. And then the font color, we'll set to this primary. Cool. So now we have a pretty basic sign-in page. And what we can do here is make sure that our fonts are a little bit more visible. So we're going to set them to bold. And now we have our basic sign-in page. So now we need to go and set what happens when we click on a sign-up item. So we're going to go to the top of our page. We're going to go create new and create a new mobile view. And this one we can set either scrollable or non-scrollable. And for this, we're just going to use scrollable for sign in, or not scrollable, sorry. And we go create. And what we can do is either copy that page or we can start it from scratch. So we're just going to start this one from scratch. And now inside this sign up page, we're going to need a few fields, and that field will be the user's email and the user password, and then a sign in button. So we're going to start by adding a group at the top, and this will be our group container. Now we're going to add in another group in that, and this group will have our input fields and then our actual button itself. So the first thing we're going to do is we can add in some text. And then below that, we're going to add in an input. And here we're going to say this will be for email. And then we can Control C, Control V, click on that email text, go next. Then we're going to go to this input A, and we're going to name that email. Now we can go Control C, Control V on that input. And this is going to be input password. So we're just going to quickly change the name of that text to password. And then let's go to our input itself and change the name of that input to password. Okay, so now we have our basic fields. But let's go all the way back to our group B, or we could even go to the container itself. And what we're going to do is add margins 20 to the left and 20 to the right. So that'll just give us some space between so it doesn't pretty much at the edge of the phone screen. Cool. So now that we have those two, we need to go over to the left here and let's move this out the way. I'm going to find a button on the left and we can drag it into this group. And now this is going to be the button that will say sign in, and we'll set up that logic in a bit. So let's go to this container. We're going to apply spacing to elements, and this we're just going to add 20. Or instead of making these all very far from each other, we can remove that row gap, keep these items as is, and then just add some margin on top of the button itself. Now, this item, we don't really want it to stick at the top of the page. So what we're going to do is go to our container, and then here we're just going to press in this item. We'll keep that as centered, and we need to tick off this item fit height content. So now that will always lie in the middle of the page. Now we're going to add in one item below here, below the sign in button. And this is just going to be some text. And what we can do is go onto the button. We can add 25 pixels again. And now this text will just say, don't have an account question mark. And this will be sign up. And we just put that centered. And then we go to our layout and put that there in the middle. And there we go. Cool. So now we have our basic style there, but we want to keep the actual styling pretty similar to how we created our homepage. So we're going to go all the way back to the top and we're going to go to our background style on the sign-in page, set it as a gradient, and then we're going to use the same items as before. Cool. So you can see now that we have a bit of contrasting colors here for our actual sign-in. So we can go to our actual text value. We set that to white. This background is currently empty. So we can say flat color and set that as white. Password, we can also go and set this text color to white. Do the same here for our password input. Set that as flat color. And then as we did on the other side, we have our white background for our sign in button. And then our font color, we're going to set here. So now we have our white inputs. So maybe this is a good time to actually use our variation. So we keep that as white, but our background color, we're going to set as black. Cool. Now at the bottom here, we're going to have our don't have an account sign up area. And what we can do here for color is set that also as white. But now we want to go and edit this specific text itself. So we're going to go into this rich text editor. And over here, we're just going to set that as bold and underlined. And we click save. And now you can see here on this space, it almost makes that sign up button stand out a little bit more. And we can go here and just add 500 weight to those items. Cool. So now this is almost a view of the sign up page. This isn't going to be a tab itself. So we do need to go all the way to the top here and we need to click this item, show top app bar. And that will essentially give the user the ability to scroll back to the original sign in page if they maybe clicked on the wrong page. Okay. So let's go now and create our specific workflows for this item. So we're going to go to our sign in button. We're going to say add a workflow, and this is going to be log the user in. And now we're going to reference those two fields that we just created. So over here, we're going to type input, and this will be input email, its value, and password. We're also going to type input, and that will use input passwords value. So now that will log the user in, and we need to actually go and then direct them to a specific page. So then we need to say, go to a view or go to a tab. And where we're going to send them now is going to be a tab, but we haven't actually created that page just yet. So we can click here, we can say create, and we're going to call this the settings page. And this one, we're going to use a scrollable view. So we'll click create, and now you can see this waits a little bit, and our new settings page has been created. And what we're going to do here is we need to quickly go to our settings page, go to our design, click on the design, and we are going to include as a tab item. We'll come back a little bit later and work on that. So let's go back to our sign in, click on this button, edit our workflow, we're going to go to a tab, and that tab is going to be settings. Cool. So now we have our basic sign in done here. User would enter the email, enter their password, they click sign in, it will then log them in and then send them to the settings page. So now what we need to do is go and create this sign up page. And what we can do here so long is when a user clicks on this text is they will also go to not a tab, but they will go to a view, and the target view we haven't created yet. So you can see now we have one more issue on top here. We'll come back and set that up in a bit. Okay, so let's go and set up that sign-in page, and then we'll come back and set this target view. So you're going to exit these. We're going to go to new, sorry, not new workflow. We can delete that workflow there, delete. And we're going to click on this sign-in area. We're going to say create a new page on your mobile view. And this is going to be the sign up. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to clone it from the sign in page, which will make this a little bit quicker in terms of creating. So we go create, and now you can see we already have our existing items. So what we need to do here is change this to, instead of the button saying sign in, we're going to say sign up. And now at the bottom, we're going to change this to say not don't. We're going to say that already have an account. And this will be sign in. And now for our actual sign in, we're going to need one more piece of information from the user, and that is going to be the user's name. So we can Control C on this email, and then here we can again say Control C, Control V, and we find email copy 2, we go previous and previous, and this is going to say name, and we're going to go change the name of this input, so to input name. And now when we create or when we sign the user up, we actually need to create them in the database. So we need to go over here to our sign up button and say edit workflow. Now we can just remove these items, and we need to go and create a new workflow for the actual sign up. So we're going to type here, sign the user up. And now you can see we have our email and our password again. So we're going to say input, emails, value, password, inputs, passwords, value. And we had one more field on the front end there, which was the name. So what we're going to do is we're going to say change another field. And now we're going to find the name data type we created earlier. And then we're going to type input, names, value. Cool. So there is one thing that we do need to go and update here, which is email. It's already set to email type. Perfect. But now you can see our content formats on these items are also email. So this needs to actually be type text. And for password, it needs to be type password. Perfect. So now we can say the user will get to this page. They'll add their name, their email, their password. They're going to click sign up. It will sign the user up. It will create their email, create their password, update their name. And then from there, we need to send them to a specific page. Now, because they are signing up, they still have to add in some information onto their profile. So we're going to send them to a new page, which we haven't created just yet. So we're going to say, go to a view, and that view we will create shortly. So let's go look at our specific items here. And these are some errors with our go to target views. So let's quickly go and have a look at this here. And this is our item at the bottom. Already have an account signed in. So we're going to go and edit that workflow. Here, the target view is going to be sign in because we are in the sign up page at the moment. And then on our sign in page, we need to go and update our text value. Remember where it says don't have an account sign up. We need to go edit that. And the new target view will be sign up. Cool. So now we still have this one error, our sign up page. And this page will actually need to go to actual onboarding flow itself. So let's go have a look quickly at the items that we've done. And we have created our kind of register account, and we've built some of the workflows for sign in and sign up. And the login user will go to the user settings page. We've created this login page, but now we need to go and start editing the user profile fields, right? So we have this list from earlier, which is our onboarding steps. Now for the onboarding page, we're going to go through a process where they'll add one item, they'll click it, it'll go through, and then they'll add all the relevant info that they need to complete their profile. So in the next video, we are going to look at that specifically, and then we can start creating all the types that we'll need to populate the user type and all the information that they'll need.
Now, to follow on from our sign up and sign in process, we are going to create a user onboarding flow. Now, this will be where we take the data that we have from the user in the sign up process and then take them through a step-by-step process where they can finish filling out the required information to set up a user profile, as well as some of the fields that we'll need later for setting up our matching algorithm.
Okay, cool. So we've just finished creating our homepage, our sign in, and our sign up. we're going to create the basic user account. And we still need to go now to our sign up page and add this last step, which will be where the target view will be once the user clicks sign up and it creates the information. So we're going to go to the top here, we're going to say new mobile view, and this we're going to call setup. And here we're going to use a non-scrollable, and we're going to create the item. Now on this page itself, what we're going to do is essentially our onboarding steps. So that'll be display name, which the user has already set in their sign up. So we're going to display that there, and then they can adjust it if need be. Then they'll add birthday, gender, interest, and then agree to T's and C's. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add in a group at the top. And this group, we're just going to go to layout. This will be progress bar. And we're just going to set this as a max height of 100. And let's actually just put that as min 80. Maybe we can actually make that 60. And then the max height, we will also put as 70. Cool. So now that's going to be our progress. And inside there, we'll also have a button to go like one step back. But we'll get to that in a bit once we've created our items. So we're going to add in another group here. And in this group, we're going to call this group step 1. That will be name. And in this, we're going to need input, and can add in maybe a text item above. And then we're also going to need a button. So this first one, as we said here, it's going to be step 1. So we're going to type some text here that says my name is, let's put some capitals there. And what we're going to do for this is we put that in the middle. We can increase the weight of that to 600, and then also increase the height to maybe 18. And this group, step 1, we're going to click on that main item. We add 20 margins to the left, 20 margins to the right. And then this here, what we're going to do is we're actually going to go to the appearance. So this will be input name. And then over here, we're going to define each border independently. So what we want to do here is just have a line at the bottom of the name and not all the way around. So over here it says border style top, we're going to say none. Border style right, none. Border at the bottom, we're going to keep. We're going to turn it to that grayish black. And border left, we're going to say. Now on this button itself, let's go and add some margins to the top. Say 25 at the top, 25 at the bottom. And one last thing we're going to do here is say fit width to content and put that in the middle. So now we have our basic kind of setup here. So what we're going to have in this button, which will just say continue. So here you can either say continue, save, or next. And this is essentially going to be where the user will either update their name or just continue and keep it the same. So here for initial content, we need to go current user's name and keep that as text. And say cool. So that will always come through with a value because they've just set it. And then they can update it is if they need to. So now we've set this as step 1. This input, we've saved as input name. And what we can do here is actually add a gradient on our button. What we're going to do is we're going to change it to left to right. And what we're going to do is set our initial color and then our secondary color. So it gives it just a little bit more styling touch there. And this will be the first step in this process here. Cool. So now when a user either clicks or updates, we need to add a workflow, and that will be make changes to the current user, and that will be name, and the name will be input name. Cool. Just going to keep that as input names value. Now, we don't want all these items to stop or show one underneath each other. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to set a state within this progress bar. So we're going to click on this progress bar at the top, and we're going to click this I button. And what we're going to call here is step number, and we're just going to set that as a number. Now the default value we're going to set as 1. All right, so that means when the page is loaded, there's going to be a state that is set and its default value is 1. So now we need to go to our step number 1. I'm going to say here in its conditional is when group progress bars custom states, the step number is 1. We say this element is visible. So what we need to do then is go all the way back to layout, and this element shouldn't be visible on page load. So what will happen there, because the default value of our progress bar is number 1, this item will show by default. But it means once we go onto, let's say, step 2 or step 3, this item by default won't be shown and will only be shown when the step number is 1. So now what we need to do when we click this continue button is go to appearance, we click edit, and we need to now update the actual state of that progress bar. So we're going to type in here progress, custom state is the step number. And now what we need to do is actually reference the current state number and then add in a new value on top. So we're going to type again progress step number. So that essentially will pull the current state's number, but we need to go one further than that and then set it +1. So when you say more and +1, so that's essentially going to create an incremental value of that current state by its current value +1. So now what we can do here is we're going to go and copy this actual box here, this group step 1, and we're just going to go Control C, Control V, and now you can see we get a copy. But now we're going to update the name of that to step 2. Let's go look at our list for what we need to play or display next. And this is going to be birthday. So here we can just say BOV or birthday. And now we're going to look at 2 ways that we can kind of set the specific user's either birthday or age. So we can say age is, and then in this one, we're just going to start with our actual text type or our number, text numbers only. And this is going to be current users age. Perfect. And another way that we can set this is with an actual date picker. So what we're going to do here is I'm just going to type 4 and I'll put that over here. And I'm going to move this camera quickly. I'm going to go over here and I'm going to look for this thing called date and time picker. So you're going to set that into the middle. And now this appearance, we can change our accent color to one of the app colors. Initial content, we will just leave blank. This type will be select date. But we want that kind of text to sit in the middle. So we're going to look for our alignment. We're going to press centered. We can then change the weighting of that. So now essentially when the user gets to this step, they have the option to either type in a value or set a date. Unfortunately, in the current editor, this doesn't really work. However, if you publish your app to the App Store or the Play Store, it will then function within the specific React Native environment. But in our kind of preview, it doesn't work. So we're just going to use this for now. So now essentially this is our step 2, and we need to make sure that our conditional is set for that specific step to show. So because we copied this group, we can now go into our conditional, and all we need to do is change that to 2. So essentially when this is changed to 2, it is then going to hide this item here, but then it will show this item. Okay, so now we need to go and add the workflow for this specific step. And I'm just going to do this. And let's actually, just for the styling, you're going to change the name of these buttons. Call this step 1, and then continue step 2. And essentially, this will just give us a bit more information to work with if we need to go and edit our workflows at a later stage. So similar to the last one, we are going to make a change to current user, and this will be the first one. We'll say input. Okay, so we didn't change the name of our input. So quickly go here. This will be input age. Go to edit, and here we're going to type in input again, and then we'll say input ages value. You can see now that we get an error. So let's quickly look at our database and look at that specific type. Our first one is a number, and our second one is text. So we can go and quickly look at exactly why that is. because here we have set it to text numbers only, but it's still saving as a text value. So let's have a look at the other one, which is our text value. This will then go through as it will work because it's saving as text. Because this one is a numeric value, we either need to convert it, or alternatively, we can go here, set this to an integer, and then that will, initial content is, there we go. Okay, so it's misreferencing them over there. So all we're going to do is keep those as an integer for now, and that will set that. Alternatively, what we can do is for our preview that's not going to work in this specific bubble preview, but would work on our live version, is then reference the date picker's date, and that would set the actual date of birth for that user. So now we've captured the two values or a single value in live that we would need. And now what we need to do is similar to the last step is we need to set a state. Now the state of the element is going to be current value plus 1. So we need to type in our progress bar, step number. Remember, we're going to reference the current state, the step number, and then we're going to play or press plus 1. Cool. So now essentially the user will add their information there. They're going to click continue. It'll set the new state. And because of our conditional on that block, it will not be visible. So let's double check that it's not visible on load. Perfect. Cool. So now we have our two items here. So let's go look for our third. And now we can pretty much create the same block. What we'll do is just go Control C, Control V on that one. And all we're just going to say here is the kind of descriptor. And we need to actually here go and delete all these items, but we'll leave that continue button. So what we need to now add is actually a selectable list. So we're going to type on the left here, select, and we're going to drag in a selectable list. And within this item, we need to then go to the list itself. Underneath, we keep it as dynamic choices. And here we're going to use an option set. So we click on our option set, then our sources, we're just going to say all. And essentially, that will pull all of the items within that option set list. And we're using a selectable list. So that will allow us to take the selection and then save it as a value. So in the actual text of the selectable list, we're going to clear that. We're going to say insert dynamic data. And what we're going to reference there is the current item. And we can't just reference the actual option set. So when you say current items, gender display, perfect. Cool. So now we have that value set, or which will allow the user to set that value. So now we need to go over here. What we can do is work on some styling a little bit before we go to the next. The borders we can set here as that darker item, and then we can quickly look at our selected. So it says this selectable lists item is selected, then it'll change to that purple border. Perfect. So let's go to our continue button, and this will be continue step 3. Over here, we need to also update the name of this group to step 3. And there you go. And the last item we need to do here, just like the previous ones, is on the group itself, we need to also update its step reference. Perfect. Now we can go to our continue button for step number 3. We're going to add a workflow. We say make changes to the current user, and this will be gender. Gender will be, we need to then say selectable list. And we say selectable lists selected choice. And that doesn't need to be the display, as we're saving it as a direct value and not the text value. Now our last item, we're going to need to set a state of the progress bar, custom state step number. Just type in progress again, step number, and then we're just going to pull that current state again, and we say +1. So now the user will go and select their item. They'll click continue. It'll save that to their profile, and then it's going to set the state one more, which will then show the next item. Cool. So now we need to go and we need to create the interests. So we're going to go here to step number 3, this box again. We're just going to go Control C, Control V, and then as our kind of header, we set the item, and then inside this selectable list, we're going to use the same selectable list, but we need to change a few elements within this item. So we are going to first go and search for a different option set, and that option set we haven't actually created yet. So before we go and create that option set, let's quickly change all our steps. And there we go. Change our continue reference to step 4. And then now we can go back into our database and to our option sets. And here we are going to create a new option set called interests. And let's go have a look for our list. So we're going to go into our option sets folder here, and then we have all of these different items. So what we're going to do here is we're literally just going to go and copy one by one, create them each as a unique value. And you can create as many as you want for this, as this is just be for kind of demo to show you how to go and take a long list of these different items and then style them accordingly, as well as creating a selectable list where it's not just pulling through a single item. Cool. So you can see we have a long list of options. So we have a list of about 20 here. I'm just going to leave it at about 16 items. That will essentially show us how we can create a selectable list. So we now have our specific option set of interest. So we can go back to the design, and now we're going to go back to our selectable list. And from here, we need to change our dynamic choices to interests, and this needs to then change to all interests. And now because we have a really long list, we don't just really want to stack all the items vertically. So we can go into the actual list itself, and we're going to switch this to 2 columns. And we also need to change the select type from single select to multi-select. And this is also a kind of good point for this one. So we should maybe go into the previous one, keep it as single select, but make sure it's required. These ones we don't really need to keep required. So now we've set that for multi-select, it's going to pull all those different values. Now, the last thing we can do is go to the actual item itself and go to the layout. And here we can just make sure that, let's say, our text isn't fitting the width of the content. If it fits the width of the content, sometimes if you're on a smaller screen, the width of each box will let's say, be 100 pixels. And then the text itself, if it's fitting to its width, will go 120 and then overlap that specific container. So now we have our step 4. We have all of the values within that selectable list. We still have our selected items, which will show as purple. Now we need to go to the actual continue and save these values. So we're going to say make changes to the current user. And here we're going to go to our interests. Okay, so we actually didn't create that item earlier. So what we need to do is go over to our data types, to our users, and what we're going to create is interests, and this will be an option set of just interests, and this is going to be a list of items. So go create, we go back here to our continue button, and we're going to make changes to the user, and that's going to be interests. And what we're going to do is we're going to either add or set a list. So for this one, we're going to use add list, and this will be the selectable list B, and we're going to say list of selected choices. So now that's going to pull that list of different items, and then it'll take the list and then set a list on that user of whatever items they've clicked. So then the last thing we need to do here is then set another state. That state will be progress bar and the step number. Before we set that, we've set up to 4 items. So let's go have a look at what else we need to do. So we've done 1, 2, 3, 4. So the last thing is T's and C's. So we do need to set the item by 1 more, and that will be progress, the progress bar, the step number. And then we're going to add 1 value to its existing value. I always need to double check that this box itself has the correct conditional. So remember, this is item 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we need to update that conditional. And then our last item, what we're going to do here is just say Control C, Control V, and this will be T's and C's. And this we can delete our selectable list. And I'm not going to add a full term of terms and conditions, but all I'm going to say here, this is where your terms and conditions, oh, if I can spell this right, would be placed. And here you could also do like your privacy policy or your usage policy, and then just reference them as links to either an external database, sorry, an external web page, or you could have them in a custom view for your users to go and look at. Cool. And this last button, we're not going to say continue. What we're going to do is say accept. And there you go. So now we have this onboarding process where we've captured the user data. They've set their different items that they'll need to fill out the rest of their profile. And then they'll also have that item at the end where they accept the T's and C's. So now those are the actual pieces of functionality. But what we can do at the top is show almost the progress of how they're going through, as this will make it a little bit easier for the user to kind of get through and shows a bit more of where they are at in the process. What we can also add at the back here is a back button that will allow our user to, let's say, go back to step number 1 if they realize they've made a mistake. So what we're going to do here is we're going to add in, firstly, a button. This button is just going to say go back. We're going to update that to an icon and a label. We're going to set that icon to be, let's use a phosphor item, or let's actually use an ionic item. So last one, we can try use a feather. And what we're going to do here is we are going to fit the width to the content. We're going to center that into the middle, then going to just remove the background and update this to a darker color. And then we need to change the icon color as well. And because this is kind of conflicting with our items within the page, we're going to make all these kind of reference items a bit smaller. So maybe keep that like that. Cool. And now we need to make sure that this kind of progress bar itself is a column, meaning that the items will stack one underneath each other. And then within this, we need to add a group, and we're going to call this group bar. And we need to make sure that this fits the height to content a bit more. So I'll set that max height at 100. Now in this group bar, we're going to go to the left and search for something called a shape. Then this shape we need to make sure is almost like a progress item within a bar. So the width we are going to kind of remove its min and max. So it means that all the items will fit together. And then the height we're going to set to 4. Have a look. Let's actually do 6 pixels height for that. And that should work. Perfect. Now we need to go to this actual bar itself, the container group, and we need to change this layout to a row. So essentially, instead of stacking all the progress bars one underneath each other, like a slider like that, it's going to push them all together, and then they'll go one next to each other, left to right. Cool. So we're going to change this name of this shape to item step 1, and we have 5 steps on this page. So what we're going to do is go Control C, Control V, and we create a new one. This is going to be shape step 2. Then again, we're going to say Control C, Control V. You can see it adds another one. We'll change this to step 3, and we just need to do this twice more. So essentially, we now have an associated block for each step within this page. And our last one for number 5. So essentially, the page is going to load. Then these items will show. Just need to add some margin to the left and to the right, just for a bit of styling. And we can go and add some kind of roundness to these end ones, just to give it a bit more of professional styling. And what we're going to do there is, we're going to add 10 pixels to the right, or top right and bottom right. And you can't really see it right now, but you will once it's got some color inside. And we're going to go all the way to that left one. We're going to say top left, we're going to add 10 pixels. Then bottom left, we're going to add 10 pixels. And those will just add almost like a bit of a roundness to the corner. So essentially, we now want these to show progress color once they are loaded. So because the default value here is 1, it means that step 1 will always need to have a color. So we can set this as a default to a purple like that. And then these ones we now need to associate with the specific step, which was within the value of that state. So step 1 will always be colorized. Now in step 2, we need to go and set a condition, and that is when group progress bars step number is, sorry, we need to, not going to use is, we can say is or greater or equal to 2, then this background color is going to be purple. So essentially that's going to look at the state of this group, or essentially what item is visible. And then if it is either equal to or greater than 2, its background will go purple. And if it still stays at number 1, it will stay gray. So what we can do now is just go to here, we can right click, we can copy that condition. We're going to go to step number 3. We're going to paste that condition. And now we can update this. All we need to do is update this number to the associated step. And we can do that for the last 2 as well. So we go onto that block, go to our conditionals, paste the condition. This is step 4. So we say step 4. And then for the last one, we click on the block, go to our conditional tab, right click, paste the condition, and we need to make it the associated number. So let's go through and preview this. I think our last item before we do that is this button, is our go back. So when a user is on, let's say, step number 1, we don't really want them to be able to go back to the sign up page because they've already gone through that sign up process. So we need to go to our layout. This element shouldn't be visible on page load. We need to add a new condition, and that will be when progress bars step number is greater than 1, or instead of using greater than 1, we're going to use greater or equal to 2. Then we are going to say this element is visible, and that will then pop up. So what we need to do here is add a new workflow to the go back button. And what this is going to do is just set a state of that specific bar. And different to how we set the state earlier, where we took the current item and then added a number, we're just going to subtract a number from that specific state. So we're going to go to our progress bar, look for the specific state, then we need to set the current state's value. And instead of adding a number, we are just going to subtract. So now we have all of our conditionals and workflows added, and now we've added all of the relevant info to the user. So let's go through and preview this page. So now you can see that we have our kind of setup. And what we could do is, before we actually keep going, let's go to our setup, and we're going to use this space around item again. And let's see what changes it makes here. So maybe let's not use space around. We can either do space between or centered, or even we could just go back and then add some. Yeah, I think let's actually just keep it as at the top. And then we're just going to add some margin below our group top bar or the progress bar. So at the bottom margin, we're just going to add 50. And let's have a look. Okay, so there we go. We have our progress bar at the top. And I'm just going to add in my name here. And now you can see it's gone to like the next step, which is step 2. And it's also updated the progress bar. So if we don't really want that to shift down onto the next page, we could just put this go back item on below. Or what we do is we just update this number, or let's say the collapse when hidden. We can't really do that right now though. Okay, so I was going to say age, you can see that it follows through to the next one. Then we select a specific item, and now we're on our last one, which is our interests. And now you can see I can select all these different items. Going to click continue, that will save it. And now we have an issue with our last item, which is our, let's quickly go and update that. Our last item, which was our T's and C's. So let's go have a look. This is not step 4. This is step 5. And we say T's and C's. And we need to update this to show item number 5 or step number 5. Now, when we click accept, what we need to do is still go and add a bit more information for the user profile. But now, instead of adding text values and number values, we are going to go through to a page where the user can upload their images. So again, like we did earlier, we are going to say over here we would then be able to add in a value that says user has accepted the T's and C's. But for this, we're just going to do this as a kind of process step. And once they've clicked this accept button, they're going to go to a view. And that view we haven't created just yet, but we're going to create that now. So now we've finished our onboarding or our setup page. We can now go back to that area we had earlier, which was, remember to fill out your target view from the sign up page. So we're going to go to our sign up page. Remember, this is for our sign up item. We click edit. Then we need to change the target view, and that target view is going to be set up. So now we have all of our items set here. We've created our sign in, our sign up, and then from the sign up page, we've gone through our onboarding process. And now we need to add in these last items, which is photos for that sign up or that onboarding process. And then we can get into the rest of the workflows and build for the app.
In this section, we are going to look at building a settings page, or you could look at it like a profile page. And in this area, we'll give the user of the app full ability to customize their profile and in all their specific preferences, and then also just give an overview of what is capable within the app, as well as looking at some of the tab items that we will set up.
Okay, so at the moment we have a no value in our target view. We're going to change this to settings. If you want to quickly go and find that, it will be in issue tab. And then you can see that we had view error. So what we're going to do is finish that last item of collecting the user onboarding. Once they accept the T's and C's, they'll be redirected from here to the settings page. Now let's start by creating the settings page, and then we're going to get into finishing the last step, which will be adding their display photo as well as their image lists. So to start off here, what we're going to do is add in a group, and we're just going to check this is a scrollable view. Perfect. So this is we're going to call this group top. And to start, we're actually going to add in a background style. We're going to be a flat color. And this we can make it gray, or alternatively, we can keep that actually as white. And then within or below this group, we can add in another one which will hold our settings items. So we can call this top header. And then this one we're going to call top settings items. So here we can go and then just going to move this over to this side for now. Here we're going to add in an item which will be an image, and that image we can add in here. What we're going to do is that image, which will be the user's profile picture. We're going to change the width of that to be max 50. We set that into the middle, and inside this kind of container group, we're actually going to add some padding. So at the top, we're going to add 25, and then at the bottom, we're also going to add 25. Now we can click back onto that image itself, and we don't really want a square. So what we're going to do is we're going to add in a lot of roundness. Here you can just type 500 into the roundness. And what we're going to do is add a border and make that purple. So now you can see it turns it into a circle for the user profile picture. Now underneath, we can also go and either add a text element, or we can add an input, which will be the user name. So we're going to add an input below here, and we are going to add, let's say, 40 margin to the left, and then 40 margin to the right. Or what we could even do here is fit the width to the actual content. But for now, we're just going to leave it like that. So we're going to go into this input and we're going to look at the appearance and we're going to define each border separately. Top left, we're going to have none. Top right, we're going to have none. Bottom, we're going to keep. We're going to set that as that gray. And then border style left, we're also going to say none. So essentially now we have this bar and it will show the user's name. But we want that to sit in the middle. So we're going to go to this text alignment. We're going to set the text weighting to 600. And then we need to set the initial content. So initial content is going to be the current user's name. And essentially that will show now below their profile picture. So what we can do here is create a specific workflow. So input user name. We can go to our workflow and we're going to say create a new workflow. And we're going to use this item in the elements tab, which is an input value is changed. And you can see it pulls that first one, which is input username. And then we're going to add in an item below, make changes to current user. And the item we will change is the name, inputs username, its value. So essentially, if a user types in that field, it means that it will pick it up as an input has changed and then update that user value. So now we have these two items, but we need to be able to add in a user image. So what we're going to need for this is an actual plugin. Same as earlier with our adding the date or age is you have items that work in, let's say, your Bubbleglow or your test flight previews on the app stores. But when we're using it in this bubble preview, specifically because we are on laptops and this is using a mobile kind of display, you do get some errors. So we are going to find, or we are going to use a way that allows you to kind of get around that, create the functionality in your preview, and then this would work in your live as well as the preview. So what we're going to do is go over to add plugins, and we're going to go over here. We're going to tick off this web button. We're going to say multi, and let's look over here, multi-file. It's 2 words, multi-file. We can look for this one over here that says mobile app multi-file uploader by Let's Code. We can install that. Cool. So now we have the ability to add in files or specifically images. And then one more thing we need to add is a toast item. So we're just going to click off the web. I'm going to use this toast messages for native, and we're going to install that as well. Cool. So now we have our 2 items installed. So we can go back to our design. And what we can do here is add in a static image. And that would just be like a plus sign where it would kind of prompt the user to add in a new profile picture. But for this one, all we're going to do is just add in an icon. And that icon, we can go to layout, we're going to put in the center. And the icon we're going to use here is just, we're going to type upload. And we can then upload that image. So now, once that button's clicked, we need to set a workflow that creates a new file. And before we do that, we need to go to the left here and look for our item multi-file uploader. This is going to add an element to the page, which you won't see in your preview, but it just adds the functionality to be able to upload it. Now, in this specific item here, we need to add in the app ID and then the app version. So all you need to do for the app ID is look at the top here in your URL. And what you can do is just where it says this ID value, you're going to go there, click Control C, add that into your app ID. And then the app version, we're going to insert dynamic data and we're just going to type app. And you have this item called app version. And there you go. So you just need to make sure that you set these 2 items to be able to kind of upload these files into your app. Cool. So now we can click on this button and go to add workflow. And what this is going to do is call the multi-file uploader. But all we're going to do is type multi, open image picker. And here we're going to allow multi-selection. We're going to switch that off. Media types, we're going to change to images. And then that would open the multi-file uploader. So for kind of convenience and being able to come back later, we're going to create a new folder in the workflows, and this will just be profile picture. And we're going to drag this kind of icon one we just created into there. And now what we're going to do is set a state for this item once its upload percentage has got to 100%. So we're going to go to this profile picture block. We're going to click the plus item, and then we're going to look for elements, and we're going to look for this. Here we say a multi-file uploaders file uploaded, and we're going to click on that. So essentially, we're going to click on something, it'll open kind of dialog or a pop-up box, select the image. Once the image is uploaded, this workflow will trigger, and then we can make changes to the specific user. And the change we're going to make here is profile photo, and that's going to be this multi-file uploaded file URL. And because we're only uploading one, what we could do here is also just make sure we only take that first item. And now because we're using a specific element within that page, once it's created this new value, we then need to reset an item. So we're going to go to multi, and we're going to say clear file uploaders upload. So essentially this just makes sure that once a new file has been created, it kind of cleans that state, and a user will be able to upload multiple without getting conflicting images. Cool. So now we need to go to that actual image itself. We're not going to use a static image. We're going to go to this dynamic image area. I say insert dynamic data. This will be current users, profile, photo. So now we have those two kind of top basic elements, but there's a lot more information that we need to add in within this page. And these we are going to use with icons. So we're going to add an icon here. And what we need to add in is these items. So we need to be able to add multiple images, add information fields, will display the specific content, but then we need to make sure that users can set their specific items. So these will be things like location, preferences, and as well as other relevant information that allows for sorting, right? Okay, so we're going to go back to here. This first one, we're just going to type image. So let's say once a user clicks there, it'll take them to the images area. We're going to click on that icon. We're going to change that to 50 pixels and 50 by 50. You can quickly go to this group, make sure that it's a row. Then this one, we can Control C. And for this item, we're just going to type location. And let's see if, yeah, so we can use that one. Then you can also go here and just pick for general settings, and then profile location, and then settings. The last one is, and then the last one will just be kind of general profile information. So here we can just type user, maybe what we do is cool. So inside here, we're going to go to this actual box itself, and we're going to add in, let's say, 40 margins left and 40 margin right, and then center these items within it. And we can then go to these specific items, make sure they're all in the middle. I should be pulling it into the middle. There we go. We're going to add some item space between, and we can put it, let's say 5. I think 5 is good for now, or we can just make these boxes a little bit smaller. Okay, so we'll get into creating this functionality now. I think what we can do is we need to go actually update this left margin. We're just going to go Control C and then delete, Control and delete. We're going to add padding instead of margin, and I'll show you why now. So on this actual whole settings page, we're going to set the background color to like a gray. You can see now we get segmented between the kind of top and bottom. And the reason we're going to do that is we're going to add in a bit of styling. that makes it look a bit more like a mobile app. So we add some padding to the bottom as well. Can add, let's maybe not add 40, let's add 25. But then for this bottom group itself, we're going to go to appearance, and this roundness we're going to change to, let's try 700. So we need to quickly go define each border. Top we'll leave border style right. We need to say this is 600. It's the top right. Oopsie, we need to change the bottom right to 600. And then the bottom left, we need to change to 600 as well. So now it just gives it a little bit more style to segment, let's say, the top half of the page, which is your interactives. And then we're going to set some states at the bottom of the page where we'll then be able to edit all of these different items. Okay. Yeah, so now we're going to go and create the states at the bottom of this page. So we're going to go over to the left here. You can just close these items so we can see better. We're going to type group on the left, then we're going to drag in a group here. And what we can do on this specific group is on the bottom, just going to add 20 pixels margin. And then here in this group, we are going to start adding our different functionality. So I'm just going to pull this one over to the left. And this I'm going to call icon basic info. Now I'll find this group here. This will be group basic info. Inside here, what we're going to do is start setting up some of the other profile information, and that will be something like your bio. So we're going to go to the left, we're going to type multi, and find a multi-line input. That will drag this multi-line input in here. And before we do that, we go to the container group, we go to the layout, and we're going to add 20 margins to the left, 20 margins to the right. And now we can go back into our multi-line input. This is going to be multi-line, which will be bio. We can go back to the appearance of this multi-line input. Placeholder color, we can keep the same. And we look for the background style. This background style, we're going to change to white. And then the roundness, we're actually going to change to 10, just to give it some kind of edges there. Cool. So now you can see we'll have this input just below. And here we need to set the placeholder or the initial content. So if the user already has a bio created, we're just going to say current users bio, and that will pull in the existing information. Cool. Okay, so now we have the bio there. And another thing we could show on this side of the page is the user's age. And we could put an input. Alternatively, we're just going to add in a text field. And we can drag that in, still into that group. And this text will be a set value. So we'll say current user's age. And what we will do here is not fit the width to that. We're going to add in some padding on the inside, just so it fits. That looks like about 15 pixels. I want those to line up. Add 15 to the right as well. Because this is a text field, we actually need to go and now edit the background style and make sure we add in our 10 pixel roundness. Cool. So now we have our two items for the kind of basic info. Last thing we need to do is go to that group basic info, go to layout, we're going to apply spacing between elements, and this we can say 10, and that will at least give a bit of info, a bit of kind of space below. Now the last thing we need to do here is add in a button into this group, and this button we can either say save, but I think here we can just put update. And what we're going to do with that button is say fit the width to content, put that into the middle, and we go to appearance. I'm going to set the roundness to 10 as well. And the last thing we can do here is go down. You can say enable box shadow, and then we can select a level. For this, we're just going to use level 3, 60p, and it just gives it a little bit of pop or a little bit of float within that page. So now we have our user basic info. The next thing we can add in is our user location. So we're just going to go Control C, Control V again. And this first item is where we're going to put the user location, but we don't need a multi-line input here. So we're going to say delete, and this is going to be text. This can't actually use a text input here either. So we're going to go all the way back. We're going to go to the left. We're going to say input and drag an input into this page. Again, set our background. Just update the runs to 10. And this will be input location. Content format here will be an address. And if we have geographical address there, obviously it's address. Initial content will be current user's location. And there we go. So we have the location. And what else we need to do here is set the kind of logic for how many kilometers they want within their kind of radius, right? So you don't want someone that's on the other side of the world, as the whole kind of premise of this is to have within your kind of radius or vicinity. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy that item, and instead of it being kind of all the way across, we're going to set this to, actually put that to there, and we set that to max width at 45. And what we're going to do here is add now a text element. But first, we should actually add a container group. So we add a container group, and this will be distance preference, and we can just drag the location input or copy. You need to change the name there, and then this text field as well into that. So we need to go to our preference group, go to the layout, change that to a row, and you can see now that they are kind of one next to each other. And then we're going to put this, we're going to change this input name to distance preference. And the last item we're going to need here is a shape. And this will just be the kind of blocker in between that kind of looks like it makes it segmented. So the width we can just add as 10, and the height we can add as 5. Maybe we can even make this 3, and we just need to make sure it fits in the middle there. Now these items we can either put like this, or we could even put them even further away. I think we'll just do that for now. And change this text to distance preference. Let's change this block to more of a visible color here. And this will be current users distance preference. We need to change this type to an integer or a text number. As our placeholder, we're just going to put like kilometers, or you can put miles, really depending on where you are located within the world. So now we have our setup for our basic info, for our location, and we'll get to images in a bit. But now we need to go and do kind of the rest of our settings that will help us with our interactive area or our kind of swiping area. Okay, so now we're going to go and do kind of our app settings, or the kind of functionality settings that we'll use within our backend. And this will be for like matching preferences, etc. So it's going to go over onto our page, and we can click on this group. And what we can do is Control C, Control V, and we need to change this to call this preference settings. Let's make sure that we have this updated to its previous group's name, to location settings. Alrighty. So I'm going to delete this input at the top here, and I'm also going to delete this distance preference text, but I'm actually going to copy this input over here, and you'll see what we're going to do now. So let's hide these items for now. It's getting a bit crowded there. Cool. And now we have 2 boxes here, which we're going to use for our age preference. And this will be age low. And this one we're going to change to put age high. And then in our placeholder, we're just going to put age and age. And we also need to go and change the dynamic kind of data that's there already. So what we're going to do here is we're going to change to here. It's our age preference, the minimum, I think. And then I'll set this to user age preference max. So now that's going to set essentially like an object within our database that will then save kind of two values within a numeric range. And that will then set our kind of matching algorithm that we're going to build in a bit. Now, the last one we need to create here is just you can use a text value. And this text value essentially is going to be our, didn't mean to backspace all of that. So let's add in a text element again. And this is going to say, well, this is going to be our place where a user can choose their sexual preference. Okay, so we need to quickly go to layouts and we need to not make that fit to width. We need to just go down to the bottom and add 15 padding and then 15 right padding. Go back to appearance and background style, we're going to add flat. And then we just add our roundness again to 10. So what we need to do is also just change the text value there, essentially the color that shows. You can see it's C7, C7, C7. So we can go to our font color. Now we're just going to type C7, C7, C7. Perfect. And now although this looks like an input, we actually need this to show a sheet item. So what we're going to do is we are going to add in a sheet, drag in a sheet, and at the top here, going to add some text. And this will be the sexual preference. Cool. I spelled that wrong. I forgot it. Cool. We're going to set that into the center. Perfect. And then here we need to add a selectable list. So we're going to go to the left, add in a selectable list. And this list is going to search for an option set. And that option set is this one over here, sexual interests. And that will be all sexual interests. So it's going to pull all those items from our option set and then go allow the user to select that specific type. And you can remember earlier we've added attributes, and that's how we're going to save that to the database. But we're going to get into saving all this functionality shortly. Okay, so now we have this selectable list, and we need to go change this text item. This text item is going to be the current items display. Cool. Then we can also go and see what our orders are like. Border color, we can change to this black again. This gives a little bit of contrast. And there we go. Okay, so now we've created all the elements, so we can actually start creating a bit of the functionality. So we'll start from here and we're going to work backwards. And then in the next section, we'll create our full image upload. So when a user clicks on this, or let's say they interact with it to try and change it, we want it to show workflow. So we're going to first go to the left here, and we're going to create some folders just to make sure that we keep this organized. Preferences, and inside this folder, we're just going to drag this in here. Cool. And what we're going to do with this is all this is going to do is show an element. And that element we're going to show is sheet A. Cool. So essentially, a user will click on here. It will then pop up the sheet. And now what we need to do is once a user clicks on this item, we need it to actually trigger workflow. So because this is a list, you don't need to set one for each. It will take the logic and then apply it to all the specific rows. So it's going to say add a workflow. Then this will just make changes to the current user. What we're going to change is the sexual interest. And now because we have gender and then the sexual interest, we need to then relate it back to the specific modified attribute we created. So we're going to say current item, then the interest type, which will then relate to that. So we're actually just going to keep it as it is. we'll use that later in our kind of search algorithm area. Perfect. So that's then going to choose that item. It'll make changes to a user. And what we can do is hide an element, and that is going to be sheet A. Cool. So the user will click, the pop-up will show, they'll select an item, they'll then click here, it'll make a change to their profile, and then it will hide that item. Perfect. So essentially, now we need to create a conditional, and this will say when current user, their sexual interest is not empty, then the actual text itself needs to go their saved value display. We should maybe put in here just a bit of information, otherwise it could kind of be a bit confusing if there isn't actually an identifier for that field. Okay, so now we have these values here, which are at the moment our integers. We need to then add some functionality to this update button. And what we're going to do here is make changes to the current user. And this will be the range. And this will be kind of input nose value, range, input highs value. So essentially, we're going to take the min for the low range and then the high for the higher elements of the range, and that will create the two numbers for that specific range. Now, because we've actually created different functionality for updating the user in that previous flow, we don't need to go and then resave their selection from earlier. Okay, so now we've saved these items here. They both have their functionality as well as their items to show the initial values if they already do have a value. Okay, so we can go to group preference settings and let's add one more thing here, which is we're going to show a toast item. So we need to go to our visual elements on the left. We say toast message. We can add that at the top. And we can adjust our colors, but we're just going to keep this here for now. Background color, make it like that. Text color, perfect. So we're going to edit this workflow. And we're just going to type toast. Click the plus button, type toast. And then in this message area, you can add your custom kind of item. So like here, I could say preferences saved or whatever you kind of want to show to the user. But for now, we're just going to keep it simple. And we're just going to click save or type save. Cool. So now we've finished this. The user will click update. It will update these items and then show that toast message. So we can actually go and minimize that. Now the location, we need to go and update these items here. So it's showing our initial content, but we need to go and make the actual updates. So we can click on our update button for this group. We say add a workflow, and we're going to add a new folder, which will be location. And we're going to take this button update, which was for our locations. And we're going to go to its item. We're going to say make changes to the current user. Their location, it's called location right. So location will equal input location's value. And then the distance will equal distance input distance preference value. So essentially, we're going to allow the user to type in their location or need to add in our Google API, but we'll do that in the next coming videos. That will pull the location. They'll then add a distance preference. And we're going to use that in our front end for our calculations. So let's go back to our edit workflow on that update button. Makes the changes to the user. We then need to show a toast message, which will again just say saved. Here you could say location updated or saved. It doesn't really matter. It really depends on your kind of stylistic choices. Cool. So now we have location sorted for the update on the user profile. Now we need to go to the basic information, and this isn't going to be an editable field because we've already added it in. And now for bio, we need to make sure that we can update the bio. So again, we're going to go here, and before we do that, we're going to add in a new folder just for organization. You can call that basic info and drag this item in, and we can then type make changes to a user. What we're going to change here is the user's bio, and this is going to be that multi-line input bios value. Cool. Then we're going to add a toast message, and that toast message again will just say saved. So essentially, the user will add in the information, they'll say update, we'll show them a toast message, and then from there on out, their bio will then show. Okay, so now we have all the areas where we can update this information. Currently, we don't have a link between clicking those buttons and those specific items showing. So we need to go and create some workflows and some states here that will create this functionality for us. So over here, we're going to do it in our group top settings item. And what we're going to do here is we're going to set a new state. State name will be active view. The state type we are just going to use, and the default value we can use is we're just going to say basic. So you can set up your own kind of text values here. Generally, we'll just use the first kind of identifying value for that state, and then it's easy to kind of remember. Alternatively, if you don't have too many of these things in your app, you could create option sets for these. So you know that you have a reference for other future kind of development, or if you're working with another developer. So the first one we're just going to say is basic. So essentially, when the page loads, it's always going to show this group basic info. So now we need to go and set the states or the conditionals or the views for these groups, right? So we've used that when location settings, preference settings. Remember, the group we've just created the state in is called group top settings items. So we're going to go to our conditional, the basic info group over here. Say when this group's active view is basic, then this item will be visible. So we just need to make sure that in this group itself it isn't visible page load. But similar to earlier, because we've set a default value, when the page loads, it means that this one will be active. Okay. So now let's go, and we've done that for that group. So we can hide the basic info. Now we can open this location settings group, and inside here, we can go to our conditionals. And again, we're going to search for settings. So the group settings item, when the active view is location, then this item will be visible. So we just need to go to its layout, and we're going to make sure that it's not visible on page load. Cool. So we've set that one. So we're going to hide that item. And then we're going to go to the last one, which is preferences. Just open this, go into our conditionals here for this group. Remember, we've referenced the top settings item state. So we go to the active view. We say is, I'm going to call this preferences. And we say item is visible. Go to the layout and switch off visible on page load. Okay, so now we have the actual settings within the page to show these states. But now we need to go and add in actual workflows that set these values. At the moment, there's things that are listening, but we haven't actually kind of pushed data that will then set this kind of trigger or these kind of actions into motion. So one thing we can do here, which is also a bit of a kind of add-on, is we're going to set this as fit with the content, no, and we'll come back later and test this on our different device sizes, and we'll adjust it accordingly. So let's set this to centered text. And now what we're going to do with this text here is you're going to insert dynamic data. And the dynamic data we're going to show here is the top settings items active view. Because we've set it as text type, essentially it's going to show us exactly what is showing. And it just allows a bit of kind of guidance or kind of clear view for the user in terms of what page they are currently using. So now we have all the basic elements. Now we need to go and add in specific workflows. So let's go here and we're going to add a workflow. This will be an icon navigation, nav, oops, navigation. And we're going to go to this one here. We're dragging it to icon nav. And what we're going to do is we're going to set a state. The state we're going to set is that settings group top settings items, and this active view. Then the item we're working on now is that first one, which is basic. And now instead of going and doing all that again, what we can do is just copy this and we go back to our design. We go here to our location icon, say add workflow. We're going to paste, and this we're going to need to change the value of what we're setting that state, and that we're going to say is location. And then this last item is our settings, or let's say our preferences. So we're going to paste that whole workflow from earlier. We're going to change the value. We're going to set the active view from to preferences. Just need to make sure that firstly, the states are case sensitive as well as spelling sensitive. So you need to use exactly the same kind of conditions and kind of state values for all the items so that they match. Now these icons, I'm just going to drag into icon navigation. Cool. So now in theory, when we load this page, it's going to set a default value to the basic info. It will show that state. All these items shouldn't show unless their state is active. And then the name of the active view should show. So we're going to go and give that a preview. And you can see here that we don't actually have any information apart from what we saved earlier. This isn't showing our actual age. The bio area is saying, so I'll say this is bio update. See, we get our saved icon. And let's go and click here. You can see that it changes our information, or at least the view that is active for our different states. Now, the one last thing we can do here to kind of increase the navigation experience is to take, similar to the condition we set for these, I'm going to copy that expression from that group. I'm going to go to this icon and I'm going to paste that on the icon. And now this was for our basic. So I just need to change that value. This will be for basic. And we're going to remove this element as visible condition. And what we're going to change is the icon color. So this icon color, we can change to either this gray, or we can use a dark black. It's really up to you. So I'm going to copy this again. Then I can go over here to this other icon. I don't want that as its element is visible. This value I need to change to location. The icon color, I then update. And then this last one for preferences, I can leave that value, and the icon color I set. Okay, so let's quickly refresh and see if that comes through. Perfect. So now you can see our active state for the items that are showing at the bottom are now linked to, firstly, this state value as well as these specific items. All right, so our last item here that we need to get through is our image. And now we're going to go and create an actual whole new view to this images, as it can take up a bit of space and it is a bit of logic behind adding firstly the cover image and then the list of images as well as updating those as well. So we'll get into that in the next video.
And just like that, That is all we have time to include within this video today. As you can see, we've been building for hours and there's still so many features that we need to uncover. If you are interested in finishing off your matchmaking app, I'd always recommend heading over to our website so you can check out the entire course. Now, while that full course is going to cost you money, it will definitely save you months of your life having to learn how to rebuild all of the features from scratch. So if you're looking to build and launch your app as quickly as possible, I definitely recommend checking it out. For now though, I just wanted to say a massive thank you for taking the time to watch this video today. And if you're interested in finding any other Bubble tutorials, I'd always recommend hitting that subscribe button on our channel so that way you can be the first to know whenever we drop a new video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.